Right, good morning everybody and welcome to the Phonostage Audio video channel. Okay, I'm going to be uploading soon this latest installment, which is a review of the amazing Graham Audio LS4 for loudspeakers. Okay, now I've not done a video in a while. Oh, come on Bella, this might work as long as she doesn't start wandering around like a lost soul. Right, good girl, sit down, sit, lie down. Lie down at my feet like a good obedient dog. Come on, like a good, yeah. That's it. Oh God, honestly. Right, okay. No, just ignore the dog. So yeah, I've not done a video for a while. I've got myself psychologically ready. Ironed a shirt, sort of. I was going to have a shave, but I forgot. But I don't know. You want to see some of my customers? It doesn't really matter, does it? So, you know, a few of them look like Henry Cavill. Most of them look like Derek Hughes. Right. So there you go. Yeah, so these were loaned to me by Graham Audio to do a review, and I've had them for a few weeks, and I really have listened to everything, run all sorts of equipment through them, different amplifiers, lots of DACs, the lovely lampizators and other things, and played all my old favourites and some new favourites. That is disgusting. That is the most... Oh. I wish the dog had more attractive toys. I played all sorts through them, and now I'm thinking about, you know, crating them up and shipping them back. So, yeah, where was we? Right. Sorry, Belly, really distracted. Okay, so before we start, I just want to remind you, because I'll forget later on, like, subscribe and share, please. I would love you to follow the channel. We've got quite a lot of followers, okay? Some of them have been around a long time, and I appreciate your patience because I'm a bit of an infrequent poster. But I've got a bit of a queue of things to do at the moment. I've been sort of loaned some equipment, and I bought some equipment, and we kind of got a few, you know. So there's a bit of a thing going on. I think we're going to have a bit of a video season. So if you start following now, you'll get to see those things, see the updates. So I'm going to get straight into it. What am I going to say, right? What am I going to say about the LS44s? Right, first of all, okay, they arrived. They were sort of like in a sort of pseudo crate, you know, kind of double wrapped, and there was lots of plywood around, chipboard around. Much bigger than I was expecting. I sort of expected that I would unpack this thing, and inside it there would be some more protective packing, then there'd be the speakers. And because there's a picture, you know, there's a picture, isn't there, on the Graham Audio website? I think I saw it, or one of the forums, one of the Facebook pages. And I think it's Derek, you know, leaning on a pair of these. You know, there's a pair of LS59s and a pair of these, you know, together, 59Fs and these together. And I've had the 59Fs before, and obviously these look bigger than the 59Fs. But, you know, Derek's kind of leaning on them. I thought, is he some sort of giant? I got them out of the box. They are pretty imposing speakers. I mean, I've got used to them now. They actually look smaller with the fronts off, but slightly more user-friendly with the grills on. I'll just show you, right? Okay, you know, the slotted baffle design isn't for everybody, but they do sort of meld into the room a little bit better, you know, when you get the kind of the grills on them. But for the purposes of and they're voiced with the grills on, of course. They do sound better with the grills on. But for the purposes of the video today, I'm going to leave them off so you can perv the teasing drivers, you know, kind of like not quite showing everything. As I say, that's not quite everybody's cup of tea. Some people want to see everything all at once, straight away. So you get the, this is, just give you a little bit of quite a rundown of sort of the design sort of principle of these, really. So they are supposed to be a kind of sort of smaller footprint, maybe slightly more user-friendly or environment-friendly version of the 5.5. The 5.5 is 6 of one and a half dozen of the other, though, so they're a bit of an anomaly, really. So I've recently installed a set of 5.5s to somebody's house, and he had to make a decision between getting the 5.5s and these, and you know, there was the kind of his wife, you know, had a view on it, and he had a view on it, and they were both contributing to this discussion, and it was about where they were going to be placed. The 5.5s are bigger looking when they're on a stand. They're wider, right? They're a bit of a big box and they're boxy looking. You get them on a stand and they're the same height as these. Okay, maybe fractionally higher, in fact. And, you you know, and they've got a good depth on them. But because they're on a stand and you can see through the stand, they're an open frame stand, they're kind of like not quite as imposing in the room if there's something behind them. If you've got like a view, this chap had some windows, some French windows, and so you could see through and they were letting light through, and that worked really well for him. Now these, I think if you're going to stand them near a sort of a wall or perhaps towards the corners of the room like this, then I think if I put the 5.5s there, they dominate that corner even more. So these do sort of narrower, okay, and they do allow you a little bit more space to manoeuvre around the corner or wherever they are. You know, some might say, sorry Jeremy, that you shouldn't have a big speaker like that in a corner. Well, I've honestly found these, for the size of them, one of the easiest to place large speakers. Well, probably the easiest to place large speaker that I've ever tried. So sound-wise, they're actually, you know, the driver, the bass driver, the treble and the mid-range are the same as the 5.5. The bass driver is smaller. It's a 10-inch rather than a 12-inch. And the crossover frequency, you know, for the low, just for the low, or the top and mid, it's the same speaker. For the low, you know, it's adjusted by about 70 hertz just to kind of accommodate the different size driver. And of course, you've got this kind of like sort of longer cabinet, which gives you some of that, gives you that bass back. I think they sound more bassy, but not just in a boomy cabinety sort of way. They sound more bassy in a really meaningful way. So this is not a big room, all right? So where you are 3 feet from the other wall, and I'm what, 4 feet away from this wall, and we're not, you know, we're close. It's nice. It's not a huge room. Is it like 4.5 by 5? I think. There's soft furnishings and settee. There's a bookcase. Somebody told me once bookcase is great for acoustics. I've got a few panels around, and a rug. So I think it's a good balance. You know, I've got me sort of balance right between hard surfaces, angled surfaces, and kind of soft surfaces in a domestic environment. So this is home, right? This is not like a Phonostage shop or anything like that. And this is where most of the listening, this is where the big bulk of listening happens. And it's often quite late at night listening as well. So, you know, I've got a 3-year-old. When everybody's gone to bed, you know, sort of like late evening, sort of ish, that's when I could sit, you know, I could really get some listening done. Reasonably loud, you know, it's kind of a big old place. But, you know, it's not peeling the paint off the walls. And I'm finding that in a domestic setting like this, for a large speaker that's capable of touching every frequency that my ears certainly can in a beautiful way, that I'm not struggling at all. I've not got stray bass frequencies. They're controlled. They're all happy nearest to the corner. I found the LS6F more difficult to place in a room this size than these. You know, because I found that, you know, there's one track, you know, in particular, where there's like a one low, particularly low bass sound. I referred to this, you know, once before, and it was a Grandaddy track, and it just kind of, not in every room, I tried the LS6F in different rooms, but in here, it struggled. It resonated at that frequency. The floor did, the world did. I haven't had any such problems with these. I had a slight, you know, kind of like, I was listening to English Teacher, their album, and there was a couple of tracks in there. It's well produced, but it's not like the best produced. And there's a couple of tracks in there. And occasionally I was listening to Uriah Heep, Salisbury, The Park, particularly. And again, you know, there's kind of a bass guitar in there. There's a couple of tracks I listened to where I felt like the bass kind of sort of like had a slight resonance about it, sort of, you know, kind of imposed on the rest of the track in a way. But then when I changed equipment, so I was using the RME DAC, and then when I put the Lampizator DAC in, I think the Baltic first, and you know, that completely went away. So a lot of it is to do with your source quality. You know, they'll probably play with anything, but increasing the quality of your source really does help. You know, they are quite a bit of an industrial looking speaker. They've got an industrial heritage, haven't they, in the broadcast business, right? So they're kind of an industrial looking speaker, but they're possessed of great subtlety. They're able to respond to any, even the smallest changes in finesse that you might get out of, like putting on something like a cable made of unobtainium, which you've heard my talk about interconnects and cables before. More expensive ones do sound better than cheaper ones, and the higher you go, if you've got the right gear, the better they sound. All the sort of shampoo advert terminology that cables invent that goes with it, there is quite a lot of bollocks there, but it's all in the listening, and there's no doubt about it that quality begets quality. Okay, so upgrading cables and things like that, these willingly respond to those differences. And the amount of fine, immersive, reverby depth and shimmering loveliness and they can really draw you in. They can beguile you and really draw you in. There's nothing industrial about the sound of these speakers. Smooth, controlled bass, beautiful mid-range. Watching. Just last night was an example. Well, the other day we were watching a film. I've got like a projector thing that pops up here. We get the family in here and watching. Is it Elio? I don't know how you pronounce it. It's a Disney film, right? And just thinking, just the difference because I had these big ushers, in the corner. I shoved them into the corner there. They're too big, right? Too heavy to move out the room, like 90 kilograms each or something. They just have to get shoved into the corner when I've got something else in here. So, I've had the ushers on here, the beautiful sounding speakers, so, refined and great bass, and they've got great reviews back in the day. But these have all that, and without sounding MIDI, right, they're able to convey the mid-range and the voices so much better. And, like the blast of like a horny sort of sound or, kind of certain types of drums. They're just like, without them sounding really more MIDI, right? They're not a MIDI sounding speaker. They managed to get that out. So when you're watching a film, for instance, those kind of center speaker frequencies. Yeah, I don't have a center speaker in here. This isn't like it's not formally a cinema experience room. It's just the stereo hooked up to the the Roku box through an optical into the DAC. But you don't feel the deficit of not having a center speaker because the imaging is so good for a large speaker. The imaging is so good. You get that center focus. The midiness, the voices and everything is so clear. I'm not suffering from center speaker deficit, just even in this 2-channel setup. You get the video on, turn on the projector, it sounds great. Sometimes I felt like with the ushers or some other speakers, because I've done that in here for a long time, having that setup, you do feel like you're sort of straining a bit to sort of understand what they're saying. Not getting it with these. So I'm getting that kind of refinement. I'm getting those micro details. I'm getting the dynamics, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm getting the mid-rangey stuff and the bass, right? So, right. What have I been listening to? Well, some old favourites. I've got some tests, some cruel tests. So, Poor Misguided Fool by Starsailor. So Starsailor, right, that album, is not very well produced, right? I'd happily get the guy, if you want to, he produced it, you can come down here, you can talk to me about it, about what you were thinking. Because there's a hi-hat groove there in that track that you can't hear the hi-hat, right? Unless you spend... You might be able to hear it when it's been had the arse compressed out of it by BBC Radio 2 and they put it out on the radio in the car, right? But you can't hear it at home very well on a normal system. And then you have to kind of have a system that can separate out the details of the instruments so well, right? And then find a place for them in the stereo mix so well that even though it's subdued, you can actually pick it out. And then you have to have enough dynamics to make it jump out a little bit, like little bumps coming out at you. One for the snare, one for the hi-hat. You've got to be able to do that well enough, right, to rescue that track, right? So yeah, these do, right? The groove is in that track, and I play on a lot of stuff, and I measure what I think about the equipment by how much it can rescue the groove in that track because it's driven by the hi-hat. Try it. A good example, another example of that. So I had the opportunity to try, I'll talk about this again in another video, the Lampizator Genya, okay, which is a premier, right, piece of equipment, okay. It's a proper high-end DAC. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It's an object of desire. This is something that I tried, right, and it gave me this. It was like a siren, right? You know, like a siren from the ocean. I could hear it singing to me. You know, I could just feel like it was beguiling me, like drawing me in. So like when I had other things to do that I had to do, like go to work or family time or eating or maybe going to the toilet, you know, I just kept feeling like it was trying to pull me away from those things and just pull me into the room, you know, to kind of like listen to it a little bit more. And I thought, this is unhealthy. You know, I can't buy one, right? It got put back in the box. So, you know, that's going to be a story for another day. But it was just so incredible. You know, it got the groove, it got the drive, it got the detail. It was the best thing I've ever heard in my life. And these responded to it. Yeah, I'm equally happy watching, you know, like a 2-channel version, you know, of a film or listening to the radio. I listen to a lot of radio on these, you know, that sort of MIDI sort of relationship between them and monitoring type speakers is there. They're great for radio, you know. They're great for, you know, that ability of them to separate things out and cover the breadth of frequency so well, compensates a little bit for some of that bad production, that some of that, whilst they so clearly identify the differences in production. It says, this is crap production, this is okay production, this is beautiful production, you know, this is like, it also then gets each one and sort of says, but this is crap production, but this is what I can do with it. And it gives you the best version of that it can. So when you get sort of like, I don't know, things like, what are they bloody called now? I'll think of it in a minute. They sound just like Led Zeppelin, right? Sorry, guys, right? But I do like it. Greta Van Fleet, right? So I tried a couple of them because I've listened to them before. And in the background, they sound great. And turned up like in a car, they sound great. But when you get them on the hi-fi, it's terribly compressed. And there's no light, no dynamics in the instruments. And it sort of rescues that a bit. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed mediocrely produced things that were produced for radio and MTV, like Still of the Night by Whitesnake. I enjoy very much the more, you know, nice but subtly well-produced things like English Teacher that I've been listening to an awful lot. You know, You Blister My Paint. There's some emotion in that one, but you've got to dig it out. The speakers have to deliver it to you, or you've got to dig it out. And then the rather beautifully Jenny Lewis, right? Okay, The Essence of Life, off Joy All. That's a great album, by the way. So have a listen to that album because, unbeknown to some, although if you might see Jenny Lewis, you might see live clips on YouTube or whatever, or videos or whatever, and she's got a really good band, but that's not the band that recorded the album. So it's a bit like Dave Mustaine, right? So Megadeth, the system has failed. And the Jenny Lewis, Joy All, there isn't like, you know, like a band, there's sort of the recording of that, you know. So it's Vinnie Colaiuta who recorded that album with Dave Mustaine, that Megadeth album. Vinnie Colaiuta, right? Sting, Frank Zappa. And then, and Nate Smith is the drummer, right? If you don't know about Nate Smith, look up Nate Smith. Look up the Fearless Flyers and all the stuff he's done by himself. Some say he's the best drummer. You know, they're all the best drummer, aren't they? You know, I think Gavin Harrison's the best drummer, but he's not the only best drummer. So, but Nate Smith playing on it. Now, he's not up front in the mix, you know. He's not, you know, it's not a Nate Smith album, right? It's a Jenny Lewis album. So, but when you get something that delivers like the way that these deliver, right? If you want to just listen to Nate Smith, you can just listen to Nate Smith. And if you want to just listen to Jenny Lewis, you can. And when you listen to that album, you know, and you listen to a track like Essence of Life, you know, you really feel like that. You can feel a bit of anguish in that song. and you know, it's just beautiful. So what other great things? So Rollins band, right? Rollins band. This is another cruel test of production, right? And maybe I'll call this section in the video "Cruel Tests of Production." Almost real Rollins band, right? When I was younger, right, when I had my long hair and all the other stuff, playing in me heavy metal bands. I absolutely bloody love this album. I had it on vinyl, right, which I got rid of. I had an LP, which I got rid of years ago. Probably sold it on the car boot sale and bought a night out in a shit club. But I've got it on CD now because it doesn't stream. You know, for a long time it wasn't on Quobuz. I don't know if it is now or not. So I bought the CD, and it's when you. It's one of them where you get it on your equipment, you know, you get it on your new fancy equipment that you couldn't afford then, you know, like a music centre or whatever, and and you realise it's still got it, but it's not produced like the way that you dreamed it would be. It just isn't, right? It's a bit lo-fi. But again, if you get the gear right, if you match it right, this is one of them where it says, yeah, this is not produced anything like the track you were just playing, Tony, right? But, you know, you've got Sim Kane on the drums, one of the most underrated drummers. You've never heard of him. You have never heard of Sim Kane. It's Sim. If you're watching this, why has nobody heard of you? You know, some amazing drumming on that album, right? There just is. You know, there just is. It's like Joe Blocker, right? Joe Blocker. Who's heard of Joe Blocker? Right, on Steve Hillage's Green album. Go listen to it. Listen to the Green album, right? Listen to Jenny Lewis. Listen to Megadeth, System Has Failed, right? Okay, listen to the Rollins band, The End of Silence, right? And listen to the drummers, right? Stop, you know, I don't like these top 100 drummer lists. They're the top 100 that you're most likely to have heard of drummer lists, right? So, anyway, right, I'm rambling on. So, yeah, absolutely, listen to it. So the Rollins band, Almost Real, where it's a breakdown. It's almost like jazzy breakdown in the middle of it, yeah? And there's little like hits, you know, and things like that. And the bass is incredible on the album. It doesn't matter if something... I'm trying to get this across. I was trying to think of the best way of conveying this, and I think I've just kind of got it, really, right? And Derek, I hope you're watching this, because I think you've really achieved something here. I think you're a bit of a gift from the gods. I've never enjoyed music. Right? I've enjoyed listening to music. I've enjoyed pissing about with audio gear, right? But I've never really enjoyed music in a way since, you know, like I used to when I was a teenager, right? Do you know that feeling of getting into music, right? You come back with your David Bowie album or whatever, or, you know, you may be a lot younger than me or older, who knows, you know, and you put it on, right? You could play it 1,000 times. You play the grooves out of it, right? You'll love it. You actually love it, right? You got to tell people you love it. You write it on your school bag, whatever you'll do, right? You know, you might have a tattoo, right? You actually love it, right? You're so into it. Every time you hear it, every little note, you discover things. You just can't wait to tell everybody about it. And it's like, you know, it's talking to you. And or whatever it is, right? And you love it. And I remember that feeling of being so into something, right? You know, I just remember it so well. You know, whether it be Dire Straits, it was Love Over Gold, you know, Telegraph Road blasting out in my bedroom in my mum's house. You know, I was so into it, right? And you know, that kind of like, when I look back, you know, I try and imagine what that was like. And I remember the drums and it must have sounded so fantastic. But then when I think back about what I was listening to it on, yeah, it was okay. I had a little Creek amplifier at one point, these Bolivar speakers that nobody's ever heard of, and a couple, you know, like maybe, I'm not sure what deck I would have been using. But it was fairly modest. I bought it with my chefing money. And it kind of sounded anything like this, right? Nothing like it, okay? But how come it sounds like it did? Is it just a kind of weird nostalgic rose-tinted memory, right? I know my ears were better probably then, right? But no, you know, it's like, it's very, very hard, right, when you get into the critical listening of the future to capture that kind of that 80s, getting into it for the music, getting into it for the groove, really just being into it, right? And any speakers, I've noticed this a few times, there is some gear that lets you do that, right? And these do, because those kind of old tracks, like the old White Snake or whatever it is you listen to, right? You know, they sort of sound good again. I don't know if it's that mid-range ability, the separation's excellent and the imaging's very good for a large speaker, but there's something right about them in the balance of how they put music across. I had a chap here, came here while they were here for a demonstration of them, and he spent a couple of hours here. But listening to all sorts of things, some classical, you know, things I wouldn't normally listen to, and some rock stuff. Yeah, I think we both shared a very similar experience. I want to put on the music of yesteryear, even if it's something like ABC, because I know that, you know, no matter, even if it's badly produced or even if it doesn't sound like it used to sound, that I'll get into it a bit. You know, I'll get into it. And there's a lot of enjoyment to be had from these speakers. I mean, I think for the most part, right, for the most part, that is it. I'll talk to you a little bit just briefly about what I've been using to listen to them through, okay? So I have been using the More Amps Angel 6 and the More Amps Angel preamp, right? Which I'm going to do a separate thing about the Angel 6, right? I did the Angel 4, which I really, really liked. Taron, British Audiophile really liked it. A few people have really liked it. It's a great little amp, right? It really is. But then I got the Angel 6 hooked up a while after that, and the Angel 6 is the king of transparency, right? It's the king, right? And I need to explain this to you. It's the king of breaking my back trying to move it. But I've been using the More Amps Angel 6, right? I've been using a few DACs. I've had the trusty RME because I use it as a benchmark. So even though I've got other DACs in the place, I've got some nice DACs. Got this Lampizator DACs at the moment, they're beautiful, right? And I use the trusty RME sometimes just as a little benchmark when I'm thinking about things I sort of reviewed, trying to make a comparison. I would have had that RME at the time, and you know, what else? I tried just yesterday, Circle Labs A200 amplifier. That was quite interesting. I'm just doing a couple of little reels about that, so just follow the Facebook page and just look out for the little reels, because that wasn't a full-blown review. I've got another Circle Labs power amp that I'd like to try. And a few different DACs. And I've been doing quite a lot of valve rolling, a bit tube rolling, okay? So, and I'm going to do some individual little reels about that as well. So I've got like a little suitcase full of tubes there that I'm messing about with. And they've all sounded good, right? Nothing sounded bad here at all, right? They have been very good at showing off the differences between all the different things. But I think you just get a different version of good, and not all of them maybe are quite to your preference. So, you know, but I don't think, I think if you live in an ordinary sized living room and you want a decent sized speaker, right, you want really good bass, yeah, and really, you know, like clear treble that you can adjust a little bit to suit your taste, to suit your room, to suit your thick, you know, shag pile carpets. You know, your abused angle grinder hearing, right? You've got a bit of adjustment there as well. You can also, you know, if you did get any standing waves in your room, I haven't got them in here, not with these, even though they're big. You can mess about with some soft, you know, woolly, not you know, something with some space and air in it, like loosely, you know, shove a couple of socks in. You know, or even in half a port. I find that sometimes works well with different things. Get like a individual, you know, not too massive sock in half a port, you know, one that'll also let a bit of air through. You know, that, you know, you can tweak. Don't feel bad about it, right? Don't feel bad about messing about. That's another thing I'd like to talk about at some point, you know, because the design of the speaker is pretty subjective, right? The producer and the production and what the band did was pretty subjective. You choosing what furniture you have in your house is pretty subjective. And your ears, right, are pretty subjective. And what they've been subjected to in their life is pretty subjective, right? So don't feel bad about messing about a little bit, right? You have not got the acoustics of the guy who recorded it. So you want to shove a pair of socks in your speakers, you shove a pair of socks in your speakers, okay? So I've listened to lots of different types of music, listened to a lot of classic rock. They do seem to excel at kind of classic rock for some reason, but I've also had electronic music on, some classical music. They're actually very good at classical music, but I'm just very, I've got to say I'm not good at gauging that, okay? It sounded good to me, but I'm not a classical music person. And then the sort of usual things I listen to, an English teacher, some old favourites like Starsailor and Embrace, okay, some 90s classics, classic rock stuff, you know, really good, you know, really good, all that sort of stuff, Uriah Heep and, you know, kind of White Snake, some proggy things, listening to Magma the other day, that sounded fantastic, okay, so, see, that's another one, those albums, I had it all on vinyl, gone by the wayside for a rock and roll lifestyle. It's a life of regret. I would say they're quite expensive, these, at about £11,000 a pair, okay? They're the same sort of price as the LS5. If you're looking for a large pair of monitoring style speakers, okay, that will work in a domestic environment, that will respond to anything that you throw at them equipment-wise, yeah, and you like the look of them, so I like the look of them, right, and I'm blessed, right, I'm blessed by the gods, because my wife, you know, she saw these, she says, well, oh, I like the look of those, yeah, I prefer them to the other ones, right, not everybody has that experience, okay, so if you like the look of them, or you can tolerate the look of them, don't forget they do them in different finishes, different veneers and everything. Or if you want to know anything else about them, you know, you can contact me anyway. You know, people know how to get in touch with me. Everybody asks me questions. So, or if you're in the north, you know, and if you wanted a demo while they're still around, but I don't think they're going to be around for long, but I am looking to get another set. I think these might be the speaker that I settle on, yeah, for kind of like the sort of permanent, there's no such thing as permanent in Hi-Fi universe, for the permanent demo, right? Because they're just so well rounded. They work in this room very well. And they suit the equipment, whatever different equipment that you kind of put out them, they're happy with, right? And they respond to the tiny differences. So, you know, without sounding overcritical or anything like that. And they're giving me back some of the 80s fun in my music, right, that I missed, right? I feel like I really just want to go, I want to put them on now, in fact, after I've done this video. But really, I should be doing some other things. So, so that's it, really. I'll probably finish off the video, think about all the things that I didn't say, right? Okay, but that's okay, right? Because ask me questions, right? Get into the comments, right? Ask me some stuff, okay? Happy to discuss it with you, happy to talk about it. And I often sometimes get phone calls or contacts from customers or people just asking, saw your video. Are you Tony, are you the guy that was in the video? Yeah, of course I am, yeah, and I'm happy to talk to you about it, okay? So, so on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say look them up, you know, do a bit of research yourself. Check out the video review when it comes online, of course. Remember, please subscribe to this, right? Give me a couple of likes out there, right? It really makes a difference because this is the kind of content, you know, a lot of people like this kind of stuff, right? A lot of people do, and I can carry on doing it. So that's it for now. I just want to say thank you very much for visiting the Phonostage Audio YouTube video channel, or wherever you've seen it. In fact, I might post it somewhere else as well. And happy listening to you. Bye.